welcome back again to another edition of the Rainy Cajun Podcast. And once again, it seems like there's a trend here that I end up having people who I'm distantly related to on the show. But Marielle SOngy is our guest today. And my grandmother was a Songy. And so Marielle and I probably have some distant ancestor in common. But that's not the reason that I wanted her on the show, even though that is a pretty cool fact nonetheless,
Yes.
in my opinion. But Mariel is I guess you're a food and writer around New Orleans, food journalist, historian. I know you've worn several different kind of hats.
Yes.
I think some people may know you as the Nola Chick from the past, but I've enjoyed following you over the years because I think we've been connected on Facebook at least about 10 years now.
Yes.
Is that a lot of the interests that you have coincide with a lot of the things that I've been interested. And so you explore a lot of the local places or a lot of places that the locals enjoy to frequent as far as food and beverage. And you do a good job of being, I say unbiased in the sense, but you don't just go into the things that everybody's familiar with.
Sure.
And so one of the things that I was really happy to see from you for a career standpoint is that you had a book that came out about 2 years ago. And that is the subject that we were interested in, is the Absinthe Frappé.
Yes.
Marielle SOngy. And so we wanted to kind of have you tell us a little bit about the book, the book, of course, and for anybody who's not familiar with absinthe and its importance to Louisiana history, primarily through the New Orleans area, because it's a very interesting story. And the way you conceived the book, because you can tell us a little bit more, but I mean, it's a series, it's part of a series, not that you did all the books in the series.
Right.
But the approach that you took for this particular book was pretty interesting. And just to let everybody know, I came prepared with my absinthe frappé as close as I could get. I did use the recipe. I used Mariel's resources as a resource.
There you go.
Anyway, go ahead, Mariel. Sorry.
Sure. So the Absinthe Frappé is a book that is a part of the iconic New Orleans cocktail series for LSU Press. And it's a series of small, very easily readable books about different cocktails rooted in New Orleans. Mine's the Absinthe Frappé, the Café Brûlot, the Sazeracs, Brandy Milk Punch. The most recent one is the Obituary Cocktail, which is actually another absinthe cocktail. So it's a really fun, readable, collectible series. So in 2021, Jenny Keegan from LSU Press approached me asking me if I wanted to write a book on the series, and she had a list of cocktails. And the one that stood out to me was the Absinthe Frappé. I'd had absinthe in the past and really enjoyed it, but I wasn't so familiar with the history of it. I knew that there was a New Orleans connection and a French connection, but I wasn't exactly sure where the Absinthe Frappé fit in and the whole history of that. So I thought, that'd be fun to research and dig into. And so that's the one I chose. And here we are.
That's an interesting drink, I guess, because I think maybe now, and maybe it's just me thinking, the absinthe related drink that I'm most familiar with would actually be the Sazerac, which you cover in the book as well, some of the history there. But I guess the thing about absinthe is that, like many of the other drinks that you mentioned in the series, they're probably made with more more commonly found liquors. And, whether it's any type of grade of bourbon, whiskey, I guess maybe vodkas or something, but this one's unique in its history. And that's what I think was really good, is that you don't just go right into the recipe. You give us a little bit of history of absinthe, which, however much you want to share with us at this point on,
Sure. Well, the long and short of it is absinthe was a very popular liquor in Europe in the 19th century, especially in Switzerland and France. And that's where it really got its its momentum. So it became
Hmm.
popular really when there was a, a shortage of wine in France due to a bug that destroyed wine plants. So wine became very expensive. So instead, people started drinking absinthe. When absinthe first came around, it was kind of seen as a drink that poorer people drank. It was the edges of society, kind of the way marijuana, it was seen like kind of like, oh,
Hmm.
people like the artists and the writers drink it and things like that.
Right.
But as it became more popular in France, the higher society began drinking it. It became more and more popular. And I cover the whole history in the book, but the long and short of it is it became so popular that the winemakers got really nervous and they
Hmm.
started putting out propaganda that a chemical in absinthe called thujone leads to madness. And what that was rooted in, there was a doctor named Magnan who did this research and he pumped large amounts of thujone into rats. And now, if you pump
Hmm.
large amounts of anything into anything, it's going to not be good results. But it made the rats
Right.
crazy and it killed them. So
Wow.
it set off this panic of, this thujone and absinthe makes you crazy and it has to be banned. And so that's what led to the eventual banning of absinthe. And so that's why it's kind of an outskirt thing that we don't hear as much about. It's not banned anymore. The bans were
Hmm.
lifted in Europe earlier in the 20th century. They were lifted in the United States in 2007. And it's a pretty not common cocktail ingredient nowadays, but there are quite a few cocktails with absinthe in them, one of which is the Sazerac, which is very popular, and
Right.
the Absinthe Frappé. And of course, you can drink absinthe just mixed with water, the way, it's traditionally
Yeah.
enjoyed. So, but the whole thing is rooted really, and I cover that in the book. The whole thing is rooted in propaganda as far as the ban goes
Hmm.
and things like that. But the reason it was so popular in New Orleans is because of its popularity in France. People in
Right.
New Orleans, of course, with French heritage, they kept a loyalty to France, even though they lived in New Orleans and they lived in the United States. So
Hmm.
everything that was popular in France was popular in New Orleans, including absinthe. So there was a time in the 19th century and before the ban of absinthe in the early 20th century that New Orleans was really the epicenter of absinthe in the United States.
Wow.
And that's
Yeah.
why we have the old absinthe house. And that's why, the city is like we have absinthe cocktails like the Sazerac that originated in New Orleans because it
Hmm.
was such a popular cocktail and such a popular drink in New Orleans.
So, Jeremy, you've had absinthe before, haven't you?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So what's I guess kind of unique because just as I'm sitting here kind of smelling the the drink is it's got a very there's familiar herbs like you mentioned that are in it.
Mm-hmm.
That is that in
Anise,
there?
fennel, and green wormwood. Yes.
Yeah. And green wormwood was the main culprit that a lot of them that was demonized in the I guess
Right,
in the
that's where the thujone is.
yeah.
So that's what, like, made people panic.
Hmm.
Mhm,
And it's got a not and so the liquor itself has a green tone to it
mhm.
oftentimes and so it because a lot of what you talked about, and I got it wrong because my brother-in-law actually likes as absinthe. I was calling it
See, it's
absinthe for
already
something, but
how many sips have you had of
yeah,
that
I mean I
frappe?
haven't had any sips yet. It's just the fumes coming. It's making me mad. No, there's a whole culture like you talked about with the artists and stuff, and the Green
Mhm.
Fairy, um, and there's a lot of beautiful artwork. In fact, I shared with Jeremy, and I didn't have a chance to send it to you. A picture that my wife ended up getting for our living room from an absinthe ad, I guess from the 1890s or early 1920s, maybe, of a lady in all in green, and I've been old enough to drink for a while now,
Yeah.
but I didn't really get as interested in absinthe until by the time I was interested in finding out, I couldn't get absinthe. But
Oh, yeah.
due to the
Sure.
efforts that of some the individuals that you detail in the book,
Mhm.
um, they were able to scientifically prove that there was nothing wrong with absinthe because it wasn't just banned. You may have said it, but if somebody didn't catch it, um, it wasn't just like banned in the United States or New Orleans. It was banned all over the world.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, there are some
And
places in Europe where it wasn't, but in the big places where it was popular, Switzerland and
mhm,
France, it was. And that's where people really enjoyed it. The places where it wasn't banned, it just wasn't a big thing anyway. So,
right.
yeah.
So what they did, I guess, is the individuals who had an interest in it, they were able to acquire some of the vintage bottles of absinthe,
Mhm. Yes.
and
It's
and
Theodore Breaux, who is a New Orleanian,
it's good, the good New
and he's
Orleans tie
considered the
there.
godfather
Mhm.
of that. Yes, and he's considered the
Okay,
godfather of absinthe. He just happens to be a scientist, as you
yeah.
are. And he got a hold of some vintage absinthe here in New Orleans at some antique
Oh,
shop. And he ran tests on it to see, are there higher than average amounts of thujone in this vintage absinthe that had
mhm,
people in such a frenzy. And of course, it turns out, no, it wasn't. It was like not harmful at all, small amount, not going to affect you in any way. And fortunately, he also had an interest in making absinthe. So he created Lucid Absinthe, which was the first absinthe that was legally sold in the United States in 2007, that was responsible for the lifting of the ban. And he
mhm.
also has his own absinthe brand called Jade Liqueurs, which is in France. It's made in France in the same area where the absinthe that was made in the 19th century was made. So, and it's considered the best absinthe really you can get your hands on. So it's
Okay,
a whole full circle thing as far as
yeah,
all that. And again, another New Orleans connection.
yeah. So the actually, that's what I had is Lucid, which I'm going to take a sip just because I don't want to get.
Yeah,
It's not a
melted
problem.
down. Yeah, you might as well. It's Friday. It's okay.
It's Friday.
Mhm.
This is like the COVID days where you had the happy hour with your coworkers.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and the thoughts that come to mind as far as descriptions, and I've heard other interviews that you've given, and I think this is consistent, is that I guess for people who aren't familiar, it has a very, and I guess it's mostly kind of maybe comes somewhat from the anise, is the black licorice flavor
Right.
is
That's
one that,
the closest. Although I argue that if you drink it enough, you don't really taste it as licorice. It's just it has its own unique flavor to it.
Mhm.
But that is the closest comparison people do make, is it does have like a black licorice
Yeah,
taste
but
to it.
in this form, which I got the recipe, like I said, out of the book, the first one that you have two absinthe frappe recipes there.
Mhm.
Uh, I don't find it to be. It's not like you just popped a handful of black licorice in your mouth.
Right.
It's got the subtle undertones of it, but it's very
Mhm.
pleasant, and
Yeah.
it's not, and it's really not even overpowering to the sense of. I tried some straight, or neat, I guess is the right way to use it, and
Mhm.
I mean, it has got a very hearty
Sure.
taste to it, as is, but in this, which the frappe is basically the simple syrup, the absinthe, put in a shaker with crushed ice, and then put in a shaker with ice, and then pour it over crushed ice, and then you add some
Mhm. Some
soda
soda water.
water,
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
then
so
I
it's
didn't
not as
have a mint.
overwhelming, and it's a nice refreshing drink, and it's not like you're not drinking and being like, "Oh my god, that's so, like so much licorice." Like it's
Right,
really it's more of a sweet drink, I think, than anything, but
it
not
is, yeah,
overbearing.
yeah, because it's only like a half ounce of simple syrup that's in this
Hmm.
particular one.
Yeah.
So it's maybe a fourth of the, or is that right? Is that about a fourth? Yeah, about a fourth of the liquid contents. Well, before you add the soda water,
Yeah,
it's
and
a
then there's
fourth.
ice and it all mixes
Oh yeah,
well.
and it's not. Well, I think this is actually kind of a fitting episode, Jeremy, because the fact that the beginning of the year we talked to the folks over at Noel
Yeah.
in Donaldsonville with their distillery, and then we went to Sal's in Metairie and got some
Snowballs.
snowballs. So this is kind of a nice
It's a blend.
collaboration of blending of liquors and crushed ice.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess that's one
Maybe
way
in
to look at it.
Yeah, maybe we can talk to Sal's about maybe an absinthe
Yeah.
snowball.
Yeah. I think
Mhm.
they're yeah, he might have to get a different license for that, but
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
probably.
but No, I mean, I like it. And I mean, obviously it's not something I'm trying to sip in. I mean, that's trying to scarf down, but I think that also kind of maybe lends to the fact, and I think you touch on it in the book, is that traditionally the history surrounding absinthe it wasn't just a you belly up to the bar, pour me a shot and you just down
Right.
it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got ritual, so to speak, surrounding it.
Yes. Yes. And it has, it involves, there's a special glass if you do it, quote, right. There's a special glass
Mm-hmm.
and you pour an ounce of absinthe in it. And then you can use a dripper to slowly drip ice water into the absinthe. And that creates an effect called lushing. And it's where all the oils and everything in the absinthe are released and it gets
Mm-hmm.
very swirly. And that's kind of where the green fairy um, idea came, is like it kind of looks like a fairy the way it's floating around and swirling in the glass. And that's when it gets that pretty, like, medium green color that we're
Yeah.
so familiar with when we look at absinthe. Because when absinthe, of course, is on its own, it's just this bright neon, almost green. Well, not neon, but
Mm-hmm.
like this, just very green. Is like, it looks intimidating. But once you mix
Right.
it with water, it's not so much. It's not so bad.
It's almost, and it's not quite this dark, and the only thing I could think to kind of describe it, it's almost like uh, antifreeze in color, the old greenish yellowish antifreezes.
Yeah,
But don't try that at home, kids.
super appetizing to make that comparison.
But no, but I mean, but that's the kind of green that
Sure.
I think of until you, like you say, you mix it with all the other stuff, and then it kind of gets a little more on the even greener side, and the appeal that you see in the pictures and such in the
Absolutely.
photo. Um, but so before you had written the book, what was your experience with absinthe? How much did you, not how much did you try, but how often did you come across it?
When I first started the book, I actually hadn't had absinthe for a few years. I used to drink absinthe at a bar called Pravda, which was a Russian inspired bar on Decatur Street. And that was in the mid 2000s. And they had, like, right after the ban was lifted, like around 2008, nine, around then. And they had an absinthe menu. So that was really my first experience with absinthe. And of course, I'd had it in Sazeracs around the
Mm-hmm.
city, and I'd always enjoyed it. The thing about with the Sazeracs in New Orleans is if you want them made with absinthe, you really have to specify that you want absinthe and not Herbsaint, because
Mm.
Yeah,
Herbsaint is absinthe's less edgy cousin. You know,
yeah.
Herbsaint was created when absinthe was banned to kind of fill that void of, okay, well, we need something with that anise flavor
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't have the wormwood in it. So, and that was also created by New Orleanians, Herbsaint. But if you want a true, authentic Sazerac, you have to specifically say you want absinthe. Otherwise they'll put Herbsaint in there. And I think the
Yeah.
reason for that is because absinthe tends to be a little expensive. And so I think to cut down on costs for the customer,
Mm-hmm.
they use Herbsaint. But at the end of the day, it's only a rinse of the glass in the Sazerac.
Right.
So
Right.
you just have to determine, how authentic you want to be. And if you're like, well, I'll save a couple dollars, it's just,
Yeah.
a rinse. But, I like to keep it as authentic as possible when I can.
Yeah. And that's what I found strange with, and that's kind of actually why I like the frappe recipes, because you're actually using an ounce and a half in this particular case, because with the
Mhm.
Sazerac, like you said, it's a rinse, and it almost seems like a waste when it says at
Yeah.
least you give some measurements in yours. But I think
Right.
I've had some where I've read where it says just rinse the glass, and then you've
hmm
done all that, and then you end up with maybe a half a teaspoon or something to pour out, and I'm like, man, that's kind of as expensive as it
Yeah.
is. It kind of sucks to throw it away.
hmm
Um, but I did have my Herb Saint available as well.
Of course. Very nice.
Uh, I mean, I don't have a Vostok bar, but I do try to keep with the traditional Louisiana ones. But the in addition to just the Absinthe Frappé and the Sazerac, as we kind of alluded to, your book also includes I don't remember, I don't know if I counted this, like about a dozen more or dozen total uh,
About maybe
absinthe
10.
related drinks. Yeah,
Yes.
maybe 10. Yeah.
Yeah, I really
The
scoured old cocktail books to find those.
mhm.
It's like I did a lot of research to find, because a lot of cocktails, interestingly enough, when absinthe was popular, some of them would just throw absinthe in for no reason. And I'm like, some of them I was like, I don't know if that even makes sense. They just like,
Yeah.
I put in a little absinthe. It's like, well, wait, why? But
Mhm.
one of my favorites besides the Absinthe Frappé is a classic Death in the Afternoon, supposedly invented by Ernest Hemingway, which is champagne
Okay.
and absinthe. It's just champagne with a splash of absinthe in it. So it's like,
Okay.
that sounds like a very Hemingway cocktail,
Yeah.
certainly.
Yeah.
A real eye opener.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I can see that. When you were talking about how people just added it to the drinks, it kind of reminded
Mhm.
me of what back in it was probably a little bit before your time, was back in the 80s when everything was Cajun. And so you'd have
Oh, yeah.
Cajun spice put in, beer, potato chips and stuff
Right,
like that. And
right.
it's like, yeah, it's not really all
Mhm.
that. So maybe that was an early
Right. Or when you see like,
example.
it's like a New Orleans inspired menu and they have bourbon chicken. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
Right.
okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it's
sure.
Exactly.
Just throw it in there and see how it does.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
here
the
here the was it it's kind of an offshoot, but the Five Guys
yeah.
has Cajun fries,
Oh
and I'm
yeah.
like, so I'll bring them home. I'll bring the regular fries home, and I've got my pantry of seasonings, and
Hmm.
it's either Tony's or something like that. Just
Absolutely.
that's how I do it. But
Yeah.
there's no
Yeah.
such thing as Cajun fries, people.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
You cannot replicate that experience outside of Louisiana,
Yeah.
outside of New Orleans. You just can't. You can try. You might come close, but my when I had a restaurant up here, my chef almost quit because I insisted on Leidenheimer bread for our po' boys.
Oh yeah.
And it was outside of his food cost range. I said, I am the owner. I'm going to pay for it. It's fine.
Yeah.
We're not using some sourdough roll or some BS like that
Yeah.
he was trying to source locally. I was like, no, it's got to be these.
Yeah. If it's gonna
Um,
be a genuine po' boy,
yeah, that's right.
you have to have
That's right.
that's good bread.
And people don't understand. They don't understand. And what do we say? Bless their hearts. They don't know. They don't know what they don't know, but they try. And look, for those of you who are watching that I think I'm ragging on you, I'm not. I'm just saying that if you want to experience New Orleans and all of its culture and all the things like we were talking about today, you have to go there. You just have to go there, and
Mhm.
there's no way around it. So anyway, I'm
So
off my soapbox now.
yeah.
Exactly.
No, but I mean, it goes like to what Mariel was saying about doing a Sazerac per the original style.
Hmm.
At least Herbsaint is an
Hmm.
acceptable culturally
Yeah.
substitute,
Right.
and even in New Orleans, out of necessity. But yeah, do it traditionally. You'd want to have the original ingredients. Uh, the I guess one of the things. So you said it was like 2008 when Ted Breaux stuff came around, and they started releasing it. And I don't obviously hadn't been to many bars in New Orleans, especially living in Mobile, but from what you've seen from food and culture writing over the years, and has there been I mean, I imagine, like you said, there's probably a big uptick originally when it came out and being able to have original absinthe, but has it
Hmm.
kind of steadied down, or is there maybe just certain places that really make that their signature type of drink, or
Right.
maybe to go there because they do it right type of thing? Or I guess I'm just trying to
Sure.
gauge how absinthe popularity is in New Orleans now.
Sure. So, of course, you can go to Old Absinthe House, but the way they prepare it, and apologies to Old Absinthe House, but the way they prepare it is they prepare it with a flame. They do the whole like douse the
Hmm.
sugar cube in
Hmm.
absinthe and light it up. And that's not done. Like in the absinthe world, that they say friends don't let friends burn their absinthe because you're wasting liquor essentially. And it really
Hmm.
doesn't
Yeah.
do anything. And that's something like that kind of became trendy, I think, in the 90s when people were like underground drinking absinthe and it just made it more interesting to them. But if
Yeah.
you do go to Old Absinthe House, do ask for it prepared the traditional way with a dripper, so you can do that. Another really good place is Pirates Alley Cafe. They serve absinthe and they prepare it the traditional way with the dripper, and you can order an Absinthe Frappé there. And that's one of the bars that has kind of centered itself around absinthe. So those are my two suggestions. And other nicer cocktail bars like Cure and Peychaud's, you can go and you can order an Absinthe Frappé or another absinthe cocktail, and they'll, prepare it right, and it'll be really good.
Okay.
And I do have a list of bars in the book also where you can get absinthe frappés. And of course, if they have absinthe frappé, they have absinthe. So you can get any absinthe cocktail there.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, that's a good source because I honestly, the only reason I had absinthe in the house was because my brother-in-law at one point was getting rid of some of the stuff he had. And my wife, there's some things that he had that I was like, no, we don't need that. And then I was like, that is like, yeah, we'll take that, because I was interested to, like I said, learn how to do the Sazerac correctly, and then some of these other drinks as well, just because of one, the experience, but also just they're enjoyable, and as we talked about, not so much from because even a Sazerac, I don't want to just chug it down. I mean, it's because it's the rinse and everything. It's more of a ritual again. And a lot of the equipment that you talked about, because I've seen, and you got pictures in the book, the different dispensers with drips. There's the special spoons for sugar.
Yes. Yes, you can, and really good absinthe, you really don't need sugar, but if you want to cut a little bit of that anise taste, you can add sugar to it. This is an absinthe glass, and this is a portable dripper that I have, and you put your water in this part. So if you don't have the big fountain, you put the water in this part, and it distributes it here into the glass.
Oh, cool.
And then looses, and and that's a really easy, if you want to just prepare absinthe at home, that's a really easy way to do it. You don't need that whole big fountain. I don't have one, and those are kind of expensive. You can just get one of those little drippers. And they also have ice drippers that you can put, it's kind of like a cup thing that fixes on top of the glass, and you put ice in it, and then you pour water, and it drips the ice water into it. So, it's not too complicated, but there are different accessories if you really want to go for it. And the absinthe spoon is one of them, but I don't prepare it with sugar. I just prepare it with ice water and adjust to taste.
So that device that you've got there, are they being manufactured now today as well, or are they all vintage?
Oh no, you can find these online. This is just if you look up absinthe drippers and things, this is easy to find online. You can find vintage ones, certainly, if you really want to dig and if you want to be, but it's exactly this is as good as any vintage one you'll get your hands on. And it works really well.
Okay. That's interesting. Cause like I said, I'd seen and heard about the vintage ones, but I didn't think about now the fact that it's basically been back on the market, I guess 20 years now, that you would have probably created more affordable daily use type of accessories that could be found. But to that point too, there's also, I think you talk about him in the book, at least there's one or maybe two collectors of these vintage, if you call them hardware or barware items. And you can actually, and they're on display at the Food and Beverage Museum in New Orleans.
Yes, at the Southern Food and Beverage Museum here in New Orleans, there is a dedicated section on absinthe, and you can come and see all kinds of vintage absinthe ads, glasses, drippers, fountains. They have everything to do with absinthe and vintage absinthe and all of that. So. And it's the only absinthe museum in the United States. And it's definitely worth checking out. The Southern Food and Beverage Museum is a real treasure. It's curated by Elizabeth Williams and a whole team of people, and it's really worth visiting when you visit New Orleans.
Yeah, we had Liz as an early guest on the show, and for I'm talking about our book and the Food and Beverage Museum, Southern Food and Beverage Museum, which I have not been to yet, but I need to add it to my list of places to go because I've seen pictures from it, and I have a feeling that'd be one of those places. Like my wife told somebody years ago when we were out in Gonzales, there's a little museum. She goes, "Yeah, if we lived near here, he'd be here every weekend or something
Yeah.
like that." So I have to kind of pace myself on those things, but yeah, so that's good because, like you said, there's that aspect that with the New Orleans ties that you've talked about already.
Yeah.
For somebody who's
There's
really
plenty.
interested in doing a in-depth study of it, I mean, they can obviously start with your book as an introduction, and then they can build on either some of the because you also list a lot of good references in there.
Oh yeah.
Like I said, it's very well researched and written, and and I mean and the beauty of yours is that it's easily accessible to, or you can take it. It's portable
Hmm.
on a
Right.
trip to New Orleans. So
This is crazy.
trying to think.
I'm looking at the drippers online right now, and it's just like tons of them.
Yeah.
My God, the
Yeah,
spoons, the drippers, the towers, they got everything, David.
They have everything. They
It's
really,
it's
really
it's
do.
it's nuts. I mean, this is the one that's got like a bubble in the stem of the glass, even
Yeah.
for the absinthe ritual. What's that?
It's look, there's a whole lifestyle behind all of it, you know. It's like there's some things that even I'm like I don't quite understand. I
Okay.
keep it pretty simple. So
Okay. I was sitting here
yeah,
going, is this like, that dark society,
yeah, I think that's
no.
just a more modern way of drinking it where it's just this bubble glass and you
Yeah.
just it's just a fancier absinthe glass.
Okay.
yeah,
But you're right, the towers are not cheap. They're, upwards of $150 to $200.
Yeah. You
Um,
know, but I mean, I guess if you really want to collect things like that and
yeah.
enjoy things like that, you know. I always joke
yeah,
that one of the reasons I don't have it is because I have cats. Because
yeah,
They'll
who I'm
knock it
sure would
over.
be very curious about
Yeah.
it and like knock into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. That would be very disappointing if that happened.
Yeah.
So I don't know much about your background prior to writing this book. I mean, what I've read online, of course, but you were born and raised in New Orleans?
Yes, I was born and raised in New Orleans in a
Huh?
suburb called Gretna, which is 5 minutes outside of New Orleans,
Mm-hmm.
on the West Bank.
Right.
And my family
Called
has
the
been
best
here.
bank for, people
Yeah.
call it the best bank.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and my family has been here basically since New Orleans was settled.
Yep.
The Songies and
Mm-hmm.
everybody else in my family. So, yeah, I'm born and bred here, and I've been writing about food in New Orleans for about 12 years now.
Okay.
And yeah, I love it, and I love the stories I get to tell and the people I get to meet. And I have another book coming out next year about New Orleans coffee culture. It's going to be called Coffee Culture New Orleans. And it's a
Okay.
journey through the history of New Orleans coffee from the 18th century to present day. So I got to interview all kinds of coffee people in New Orleans, all the roasters of New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a coffee lover, I cover everything from the inception of how coffee was discovered and roasting coffee and grinding coffee and how to brew it and the whole 9 yards. And so I'm really, really excited about it.
That's
And
great.
it was a lot
That's
of
also,
fun to research and write.
yeah, I
As
bet.
someone who loves coffee, it was a lot of fun to research and write.
You kind of have to be. I mean, there's
Yeah.
no way, otherwise you'd just be posing. But I mean, so that's also through LSU Press.
That is through LSU Press, yes.
Okay.
And the plan is for that to be out next summer.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah,
So-
because that's the thing about it. I mean, I've been drinking coffee and chicory since I was 5 years old. Just my mom. I mean, it was I guess coffee milk and stuff. But when we lived I was born in Houston, and then we lived in Dallas for a little bit. But that was some of the things, and I guess my mom could get it there, but she would get the red can of French Market coffee and chicory.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I still drink the red or the white, and I know that there's two versions of the red today, but I've tried the some of the other brands like Community, but I know that I've always been fascinated by the fact that when I'd go down the aisles, especially when we'd go visit and Meta, we'd go to Dornax, and I mean, in Alabama, it's gotten better since we have Rouse's now. But and I go down you might find Cafe Du Monde and French Market, and that was about and of course
Community.
I just lost Community. Yeah, the damn
Yeah.
the frappé's getting in
Go make some coffee, stat.
Yeah.
yeah. But the I'd see the Union and some of the other brands, CDM and I was like, why? How can they all be that different? And I did about 15 years ago actually buy a bag or a can of each, Louisiana and all these, and I try them, and it was amazing that to me no two of them in that particular case taste the same. But I
Yeah.
know that the coffee is beyond just coffee and chicory. I was just focusing on that, so.
Sure.
That's got to be, like I said, I know that that's a pretty interesting history that you're going to be covering with that.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to research, and I learned so much about just how much New Orleans coffee, extends to the rest of the United States. Even as something you don't really think about as far as, how it's made, like Vietnamese coffee. Like the Vietnamese coffee that is made in the United States, throughout the United States, it's made with CDM because of the influx of the Vietnamese after the Vietnam War into New Orleans. Many of them got jobs at Cafe Du Monde, and they, that's just the coffee they started to drink, and they made their Vietnamese coffee with it, and it permeated throughout the United States. So you can go to meet really anywhere, and if they're making Vietnamese coffee, most of the time they're making it with CDM, which I found like so fascinating.
That's crazy.
That is cool.
And so many other things like just began here in New Orleans, and coffee not to like make this a whole coffee conversation, but
no.
Coffee really was responsible for putting New Orleans on the map as far as commerce goes. And it's all rooted in like the steamboat and shipping and imports, exports, and the whole thing. So I think it's going to be a really interesting book, and I think people will enjoy it. I'm excited about it. And maybe I'll come back and talk more about it when it comes out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, definitely. Because, when you're talking about all this, and I'm thinking about 15, well, no, it was more like 30 years now. Wow, time flies. When I was in graduate school, that I remembered when of course, Jeremy, I don't know if you weren't in Seattle quite yet, but in Mobile, we started seeing some of these coffee bars that would show up, and people talking about just how coffee was, the thought of how Starbucks and all of them giving everybody a good coffee experience. And I never thought of, because I guess I always associated coffee drinking in New Orleans with being important and part of the daily ritual, so to speak. So when they were talking about making, because a lot of times you go out to the workplace and you'd see people brewing cans of, I guess, nasty coffee, but it wasn't so much to enjoy it as it was just to keep them going. And I think I've always associated New Orleans, maybe I'm biased, with the appreciation of the flavors associated with the different
I
coffees.
think so. I'm biased too.
Yeah.
It's interesting living up here now, growing up in New Orleans and then living up here, everybody associates Seattle with coffee, and it's mainly because of Starbucks. But what's really interesting is that a lot of people who grew up here in Seattle do not associate with Starbucks. They actually don't really like Starbucks. So
I've heard that.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and part of it's they're the top dog now, and there's a Starbucks every 10 feet, and it's nuts. But there are plenty of shops here, but they're primarily focused around espresso based drinks.
Oh yeah.
It's not, traditional brewed coffee. I guess, there's a lot of people they're into espresso, so lattes and that kind of stuff, but cappuccino, that kind of stuff. But the coffee lifestyle that I grew up with in New Orleans that's not the same thing here.
Right.
It's definitely not the same. So
yes, and I cover again in the book how even now finding coffee with chicory in coffee shops here in New Orleans is tricky, because a lot of people who are opening coffee shops are kind of moving away from that, sadly.
Right.
Just because a lot of people don't like it, which is crazy to think, but a lot of younger people who drink coffee, they don't gravitate towards coffee with chicory. I like it. That's what I've always had. But I like really all kinds of coffee. I'm not really picky. Mine doesn't have to have chicory in it.
Right.
But it is interesting how there's been such a shift kind of away from it, especially in the last like 20, 25 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe it's just it's not bougie enough, the chicory, it's it's because if anybody knows the history of why chicory made its way into coffee, you'd understand its importance, but I don't think it necessarily detracts from the flavor. It's definitely a distinct and a different flavor from just coffee beans that are roasted and then ground. But yeah, we did it up here. We did it for the restaurant. We brought up coffee from, and I'm pretty sure it was CDM. Yes, there's a can right there. So yes, and we did beignets every Sunday morning and CDM, and people loved it. They loved it. Now they put a crap ton of milk in there too to cut it, but because they love their lattes, right? So it's like a little bit of coffee, a lot of milk. But I don't get it. I don't get why. I mean, I understand it to an extent because people like in the Northeast, they'll swear up and down by Dunkin', and that part I do not get. My father, he lived in New Jersey for the past 2-3 decades. And he swears by Duncan, and I'm going, what's wrong with what happened to you?
Well, I guess you just want something fast and easy, and you're not, particularly particular about the kind of coffee you're drinking.
Right.
I think that's a lot of the reason people don't want chicory in their coffee maybe now, because I think they're more coffee purists, and there's so many great roasters out there who really they roast really good coffee from, Ethiopia and Colombia and all that. So, I can understand not wanting to infiltrate it with chicory. Yeah. So, I mean, everybody has their taste, but the Dunkin' thing is,
that still blows my mind. It's just an excuse to get donuts.
There you
go. So did you find any, comparison in a sense from the coffee culture with like the absinthe culture? I mean, obviously there was the ritual around meeting and drinking it, but I guess there's PJs that came along in the 80s or 90s as far as coffee houses. Did you find anything as far as similar type of, obviously I think people are very brand loyal to their coffees probably as well.
Right. The thing I just discovered most is like this. There's people passionate about absinthe and what type of absinthe they drink. There's people passionate about what kind of coffee they drink. Like some people, like I said, only like Ethiopian coffees or only like Colombian coffees. And it's such a personal thing, especially coffee, because so many people, they start their day with it and it's just their comfort and they have the kind they like. But it's interesting because with absinthe, the way you have different accessories with the drippers and the spoons and the glasses and everything, they have people who swear by certain grinders and they like their coffee roasted a certain way and just things of that nature, and like just learning the difference between, the medium roast and the dark roasts and the flavor profiles. And it's just, it's such a personal thing.
Right.
But, there are people who are very particular about the way they brew their coffee. Like they swear by an AeroPress or they swear by a mocha pot, just whatever they enjoy. It's just, it's all very, it is connected when I really think about it. It's like,
So were you able to try a lot of the different coffees and a lot of the different brewing methods when you were putting the book together?
Yes, I was fortunate that I was able to go to different coffee shops, and I had some baristas explain to me, well, what's the difference between this and that? And I learned some new techniques myself. I'm still a classic just drip coffee person.
Yeah.
But I'm a little more open. Yeah, I'm a little more open-minded to the more I don't want to say complicated, but like Chemex is this, this gadget where you pour in the coffee you wet the filter, and it's it's
Mm.
it's interesting, and every brewing method makes coffee taste different, and you know,
Mm.
it was interesting to learn about.
Do
That's
you find that you after researching this, did you go, I'm going to save up for one of these, whatever, a brewing machine or specific grinder, because those things, if you get like the commercial grade or at least
Oh yeah.
the prosumer, they get into the thousands easily,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yes. Yes.
So, I mean, is it just Mr. Coffee for you? Is that how you roll, or is it,
I just use a drip coffee maker.
Okay.
I will spend a few dollars on a really good bag of coffee, which is now going up because of the tariffs and
The
all of
tariffs,
that. But
right?
that's a whole other conversation. But I will spend my money on a really good bag of coffee. And
Okay.
I always say that's a great gift idea for me. It's just to go into a coffee shop and just get a really nice bag of like a pound of coffee. And it's like, that's easy. I'm easy.
Okay.
It's like a
Well,
lot of ways, like a good bottle of wine,
yeah.
and
Right.
somebody
That's
sharing.
exactly it. That is exactly it. And that's so interesting you made that comparison, because it's true. It's how it's grown. It's how the weather is.
Mhm.
It's like there's so many factors that go into how the coffee tastes.
Mhm.
And it's very similar to wine.
Do you find
Yeah.
that the pricing structure is matched to what the perceived quality, or not? No, perceived quality would be the wrong way to put it. The actual quality of the bean. Like there's a lot of low priced wines that are really, really good,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yes.
And do you find that in your exploration, did you find that there are certain beans or roasters that their product wasn't very expensive, but was still a very high quality roast?
Right. Well, I'll say this. Before I started this process, I always wondered why I would go into a coffee shop and sometimes a cup of coffee would be $4 or $5. And I'm like, well,
Mhm.
isn't it just beans and water? And as I did the research, I realized how much goes into that bag of coffee. And
Mhm.
you have to trace it back to the importers and the people who sell it and the
Right.
farmers.
Right.
This coffee is being grown on small family farms. And these are people that need to make a living and need to make money. And, it's in danger of their land they could easily sell their land, which I learned, to, people who want to grow sugar, because that's, an easy way to make money. And so if we don't spend the money on the coffee, the farmers will go out of business. But to answer your question, I find that the coffee prices, when you're buying from a small roaster, like here in New Orleans, for example, you're not going to be spending, it's not going to be cheap. It's not like you're buying at the grocery store.
Mhm.
But I do think it is worth the money. Like if you spend $20 or even $25 on a bag of coffee, that doesn't have to necessarily be your everyday coffee. But I certainly think I'll say I can definitely taste the quality between that and something I would get at the grocery store, without
Sure.
naming names, but we all know the big name
Right.
brands
Mhm.
that are just there on the
Mhm.
shelf. But so in that sense, I can definitely taste the quality difference for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a woman stop me at the, it's nothing against them, but at Rouse's, I was looking at coffee and I was getting my can of French Market, and it was on sale, and it was an older woman, and she was making comments about, you know, I think she saw the price and how inexpensive it looked compared to some of the other things that weren't on sale at that time.
Oh, sure.
And so I think she was asking about, um, she wasn't really asking me if it was a good coffee. I think she was just looking at the price. And I'm like, unless you know that you like coffee and chicory, I can't say that I would recommend you get it,
Right.
because it's going to be a different type of flavor. If you're just going off of the price, then there's some perfectly good name brands or even store brands that they carry that are just all 100% coffee that are probably a little more inexpensive. And I think she resolved, excuse me, that she would just go to another big box store where she could get it in
Right.
bulk and and take
Right.
it home. And it wasn't even going to be, French market. It was going to be something else. So it was just somewhat of an interesting conversation, because I could tell that her interest wasn't necessarily in the overall taste, but
Oh,
in
sure.
the price
Yeah.
point. So,
Right.
I mean, I'm like you. I don't mind spending a little bit more on something that I know is going to taste good, and and
Right.
if it's that more expensive, then right, I'll try to relegate it to where it's going to be more of a special occasion or something like that.
Absolutely.
What does a can of French market or CDM go for where you are, David?
I think it's about, I just got a can of French market. I think
Yeah.
it's about 8 now. I think it's up to about
Okay.
8.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
It's
Yeah.
I don't think we can get French market up here. I know we can get CDM. It's 11 or 12.
oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, up
Yeah.
here. So
Well,
and you don't know how old it is, and I mean, I guess you could look at. There's probably a date stamp on the can, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's the I now. Did you find like for instance, I only buy whole bean because we have a
Mhm.
grinder here at the house.
Right.
Did you go through that exploration of purchasing whole bean versus
Yes.
pre-ground? You did.
And I'm now a whole bean endorser. I can absolutely tell the difference, even
Yeah.
when it's, and Community is a great coffee. Don't get me wrong, but Community is not as expensive as some of the coffee shop coffees.
Right.
And even with Community, I can tell a big difference between fresh ground whole bean and the pre-ground. So I would say, like, you can get a grinder pretty cheap, for like
Yeah.
$30, one of those little small grinders. And that's all I use.
Mhm.
I don't need
Right.
anything crazy, expensive, fancy or anything.
Right. Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do with the oxidation of the the more
Oils
surface
and
area that is
Right.
exposed to the air, it oxidizes faster, and then obviously that contributes to degradation and flavor. So yeah, well, hopefully we get more people understanding that, because that's I know that not everybody can buy a grinder, but even if you do it at the store, you buy a whole bean at the store, and then I guess they still have the self-serve grinding
Yeah,
machines.
they do it.
Oh, I'm sure some places, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I've
that
seen
just
it.
makes
Rouse-
far more sense to me than to buy something that's, unless you don't have the time. But I mean,
Yeah, and I definitely want to have you back to talk about the coffee when it comes out, because I'm thinking about a lot of questions right now, just about
Yeah.
not just the things around even comparisons brand to brand. Obviously, with absinthe, we can sort of talk about that, but at the same time, not as many people have experienced the different ones or even the accessibilities. Because I think
Sure.
and I think you mentioned this on one of the podcasts that I listened to that you were on, as far as like even in New Orleans, and I haven't looked in Mobile, but how many varieties of, if you go to the liquor store, how many varieties of absinthe can you even find, say, and maybe your best shop over there to purchase something like that?
I'd say you can usually find maybe 3 or 4 brands.
Okay.
You have to really be careful as far as, one of the big ones is Absinthe, and that's not a real absinthe. So,
Okay.
the ones I would suggest, excuse me, are Lucid, of course. That's one that's pretty common and easy to find. And St. George is another one. But usually, like locally here in New Orleans, if you go to like Sydney's or something like that, you can probably find 3. I would think 3 or 4 on the shelf. Total Wine also has a few here in Metairie.
Okay, I was just about to ask. I almost went there last night to get some, but yeah.
Am I centered?
Total Wine?
Okay.
Now you are. You're
Got it. Like, it's so weird, the perspective here. So
Yeah.
it
You got to
takes some
think of
time.
different. I'm trying to think if there's anything that we didn't ask you about the book, or about what you've done that you want to talk about.
I think we covered it. If you want to read things I've written for past publications, you can go to my website. It's mariellesongy.com. And just keep an eye out for my coffee book, Coffee Culture New Orleans, from LSU Press. It'll come out next summer. That's the plan. So
And you're on Instagram as well. I saw that.
Yes, I'm on Instagram. I'm on Blue Sky, Nola Chick. So look me up.
Yeah, I like I said, I know you're also got a lot of interest in sort of the retro styles of the late 20th century, well, more the 50s, 60s style in dressing and
yeah,
decor.
definitely. Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah. So I like that too, to see that. I could see how you could incorporate all that into a nice coffee book about
there you go.
Yeah,
coffee barware or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, definitely
anyway,
we're gonna have to bring you back, once the book comes out. And
absolutely, I'd love to come back.
Or David, we keep talking about this every time we go down to Baton Rouge. I know you gotta get back, but maybe we can plan in some time where you and I both stay over and we can go to a coffee shop and sit down there in person. Exactly. That would be awesome. It
would.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can try to do that. But anyway, Mariel, thank you so much for your time today. And
thank you so much. I had a great time.
I know I asked you about 2 years ago, and things we all seemed to get busy with different things. And I think the book may not even just come out. And
right.
And so I'm thinking even more questions I could ask you about absinthe. But anyway, maybe like I said, we'll do a part 2. Any questions I didn't get on absinthe that time, we'll start with that, and then we'll go into more in-depth coffee talk at that point.
There you go.
So, but I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it so much. It was wonderful speaking with you.
Thanks for coming on. I'm looking forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.